Hi, my name is Dan Delamonte, and I'm about to present a prediction. As if you didn't have enough predictions in the last few years, blood red moons, um, Y2K, the Mayan calendar. Anyway, I'm going to throw my own 2 cents into this. As soon as I find it, okay. We'll begin with this. Did Nostradamus predict a lady clothed with the sun according to the Catholic tradition? I think he did. Did Nostradamus say where the event will take place and if it has a direct link to the events at Fatima in 1917? I think he did. Did Nostradamus state this event will bring about the age of Aquarius? I think he did. Did Nostradamus state there will be a judgment day to be witnessed by all of mankind stemming from this event? I think he did. Does my interpretation of the third secret of Fatima match the predictions of Nostradamus? Well, I think it does. Anyway, two minor statements. First of all, before I get into it, all right, there is a Catholic tradition that the event in Revelation called the Lady Clothed with the Sun or Woman Clothed with the Sun will take place in the sky, and Mother Mary will crush his head, Satan's head, in the sky. What they did was take a passage from Genesis, and the passage in Genesis said, I will put an enmity between you, the woman, and the snake, and serpent, and that matches the lady clothed with the sun in the Revelations. You put them together, and you would have that tradition. Some Catholics don't agree with that tradition, but other ones do. Well, that's the one that I'm going with. I think that's going to be the event that's going to take place in the near future. Okay, now to link it with Fatima. I'm not going to go into the background of Fatima right away. I'm just going to say there was the most famous visitations by Mother Mary took place in Fatima in 1917. And she appeared there 6 times before 3 children, Lucy, Jacinta, and Francesco. Okay, but what people forget, and these visitations occurred from May 13th to October 13th. There is a situation where on August 13th she was there, but the children weren't there, but she was where she was. Anyway, this is what the statement said regarding Fatima on the very first visitation. I come to ask you to come here for 6 months at this same hour. There I will tell you who I am and what I want, and afterwards I will return here a 7th time. All right? And as far as I know, she never did appear there for the 7th time. So, now I'm going to get into the quatrains of Nostradamus. Let's begin with the basic ones. Did Nostradamus predict a lady clothed with the sun according to the Catholic tradition? I forgot to mention something. Jesus, in the New Testament, after he sent his disciples out into the world, quote unquote, when they came back, they marveled that they actually cast out demons in his name. And then Jesus said the following line right after, and I looked onto heaven and saw Satan falling like lightning. So he could be referring to 2 events, either the initial event when Satan and or Lucifer at the time, and 1/3 of the angels were kicked out of heaven because pride got to them and they thought they could overtake God. Or what else could he have been referring to except the lady clothed with the sun booting Satan's head in the sky? Now, Jesus said Satan. He didn't say, and I looked onto heaven and saw Satan with 1/3 of the angels falling. He said, I looked onto heaven and saw Satan falling like lightning. So, here we go. Does Nostradamus predict anything like the event with the lady clothed in the sun that I just mentioned? Century 10, Quatrain 19. The day she will be hailed as queen, the day after the benediction and prayer, the reckoning is right and valid. Once humble, never was one so proud. Well, I don't know about you, but that kind of fits in with the lady clothed with the sun, kicking Satan in the head in the sky. You don't really get the sky out of this, but there is a reckoning. It is right and valid. The day she will be hailed as queen, the day after the benediction and prayer. She might appear at Fatima for the 7th time before this event takes place, hence it's over a 2-day period, or she might take place after the event at Fatima for the 7th time to say, yes, it was me. Our Lady of Fatima is the lady clothed with the sun, and it all connects with the events at Fatima. Once humble, never was one so proud. Another one. Century 2, Quatrain 93. Fire, color of gold from the sky seen on earth. Air, struck from on high, marvelous deed done. Great human murder, the nephew of the great one taken. Death spectacular, the proud one escapes. Here we go again. Fire, color of gold from the sky seen on earth. Wow. There's going to be an event taking place in the sky, seen on earth. And here, air, struck from on high, marvelous deed done. The prince of this world gets struck from on high? Doesn't that make sense? It fits into me. Great human murder, the nephew of the great one taken. Notice he says there's going to be a great human murder. There is no mention of that in the book of Revelation, and there's a reason for it, but there's going to be humans involved in this event. Okay? There will be humans that will have a downfall with Satan. When he has it, they will have the same thing. It's going to be a sizable number of people, and it will probably include maybe 200 to 500 people, and you will know who they are. I'm not going to get into it. The death spectacular. The proud one escapes. Well, he's not going to die. He's going to get his head booted in, but he's not going to die. He's a spirit, right? And he's going to recoil back to the depths of hell for a while. Then he'll probably emerge again, and how large he grows after that, that's up to mankind. Century 6, Quatrain 46. After great trouble for humanity, a greater one is prepared. The great mover renews the ages. Rain, blood, milk, famine, steel, and plague. In the heavens, fire seen, a long running spark. Well, 2 lines here. The great mover renews the ages. God is going to do something bringing about the age of Aquarius. And what is the sign of that? In the heavens, fire seen, a long running spark. Well, if Satan gets booted in the head and we're looking at it, it's going to look like fire, a long running spark going down. It fits. Century 2, Quatrain 87. Afterwards there shall come from the outermost countries a German prince on the golden throne. The servitude and waters met. The lady serves, her time no longer adored. Okay, sometimes what I've noticed with Nostradamus is you have to put the lines in certain, you have to switch the lines so it reads more in a chronological order. A German prince on the golden throne could very well be Pope Benedict, because he came from Germany and he became Pope, right? So if you look at it from that point, a German prince on the golden throne, and afterwards there shall come from an outermost country. Well, Nostradamus lived in France, and Germany is not an outermost country, so it has to come from somewhere. And notice what he says after that. The servitude and waters met. Maybe the age of Aquarius, you know. The lady serves, her time no longer adored. Now, the Catholic Church really has a situation with the events at Fatima because they really don't know what to do with it. I'll get to that hopefully later on. There was visitations, and then it just fizzled away, especially when it came to the third secret of Fatima. All right? Event before the event. The great star will blaze for 7 days. The clouds will cause 2 suns to... Century 2, Quatrain 41. The great star will blaze for 7 days. The cloud will cause 2 suns to appear. The large mastiff will howl all night when the great pontiff has changed country. Here's another situation. You have to put it in chronological order. When the great pontiff has changed country. What could he possibly mean? Well, when John Paul II became Pope, he ended a tradition where the Pope had always come from Italy. I think it's 400 years, whatever, and that, by coming from Poland, it changed that tradition. They didn't come from Italy before that. They came from Italy before that, and John Paul II ended that. Second one, Pope Benedict did not come from Italy, he came from Germany. the tradition, the new tradition has been maintained. Third Pope, Pope Francis, came from Argentina. So, again, it's been maintained. So this is a telltale sign. One thing I noticed about Nostradamus is that whenever he says when or then, pay attention to it because it might show the time frame. When the great pontiff has changed country. Well, that took place. Now you put that in the front line. When the great pontiff has changed country, which is any time now, the great star will blaze for 7 days. The cloud will cause 2 suns to appear. The large mastiff will howl all night. Okay, so there might be a sign before this event, 7 days before. The great star will blaze for 7 days. And then what happens? The cloud, the heavenly cloud, you can assume, will cause 2 suns to appear. Mother Mary clothed with the sun would look that way. And then his last line, the large mastiff will howl all night. I remember reading one interpretation of this, and they tried to make it fit in with Britain because of England, because of its bulldog image. This line has nothing to do with England. The large mastiff will howl all night. So what could he be referring to? Well, a large mastiff could be a hellhound, and if it's a large mastiff, it's probably Satan's favorite hellhound, and we'll call him Pookie. So why is Pookie howling or crying all night? Because Daddy got kicked in the head. To me, this quatrain fits in perfectly. Here, now we're going to go to the event. Where? And you should be very familiar with this quatrain because everybody and their grandmother tried to make it fit to 9/11. Century 6, quatrain 97. At 45 degrees, the sky will burn. Fire to approach the great new city. In an instant, a great scattered flame will leap up. When they will want to have verification from the Normans. Now that last line, it's also been presented as when the world will demand verifications from the Norman. All right, so what clues do we have? Okay, first of all, verification. Verification of what? The event, or if the event came from God. Wherever this event takes place, it's going to make news. I mean, it's going to really capture the world's attention. And quite frankly, it's about time God started making some headlines in this world. But anyway, verification of what? They're going to, did this event come from God? Wherever this takes you, you guys are there. What happened in your country? We're going to investigate this and we'll get back to you. Yeah, I suggest you do. But what clues does he give us as to the where? Well, when they want have verification from the Normans. The Normans could be people from Normandy, a province from France. That's possible. Normans could also be a northern people or a northern country. All right, now if you combine the two, you get a northern country, possibilities, a northern country which has a connection to a province in France, or you have a northern country with a province that has a connection to the nation of France. All right, like they speak French. Well, if you look at it from that point of view, there's only one possible country that fits: Canada. Canada has 10 distinct provinces, and they do have a province of Quebec that speaks French, thus connecting it to France. So, possibility, it could be Canada. Then the other clue, at 45 degrees, the sky will burn. Well, just for the record, Ottawa is located at 45 degrees latitude. So is Montreal, which is located in the province of Quebec. Then I found another place, Quebec City. Now, Quebec City is located at 46 degrees latitude, just above the mark. But what's the other clue that Nostradamus gives us? Fire to approach the great new city. Well, in 2008, Canada celebrated Quebec City's 400th anniversary as being the oldest city in Canada. Therefore, at one time, if it was the oldest city in Canada, it had to be the new city in Canada. And it was the new city to the nation of France, because it was French explorers who helped colonize Canada, and that gentleman's name was Samuel de Champlain. It was founded in 1608. All right. Now, during the reading the quatrains of Nostradamus, I came across this passage, the Phoenix Emperor, and that would be a perfect description to describe the end of one age and the beginning of another. And the defining individual for both ages would be Jesus. This you can check up. Some astrologers believe that Jesus was the defining individual for the age of Pisces, and he's going to be the defining individual for the age of Aquarius, which is supposed to be a very positive time for mankind, tolerance, harmony, everything, right? It could be very well from this event. That age of Aquarius will begin from this event. So now, there's one more thing I have to mention. When I looked at the Phoenix Emperor, I decided to check the research on Phoenix, right? And I thought it was just from Greek mythology. Well, it turns out many cultures have the Phoenix symbol. The Chinese have their own version of the Phoenix. So do the Japanese, if I'm not mistaken. So do the Arabic people, and so do the Jews. Now, according to the Jewish tradition, they rely on a fable that takes place in the Garden of Eden. By the way, since we're talking about fables, there was one fable I remember hearing when I was at university all those years ago, to quote Ronald Reagan. But anyway, this Hindu fable was Lord Krishna appeared to somebody who didn't like a few religions. And he said, "Do you see me?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, I see you." And then he said, "Just a minute." So he incorporated himself with the god of another religion. "Do you see me now?" No, I don't see you. He incorporated himself with another religion into the god of that religion. "Do you see me now?" No, I don't see you. He incorporated himself in the god of another religion. "Do you see me now?" No, I still don't see it. And then Lord Krishna said, to paraphrase, "Well, I got news for you, Jack. If you don't see me in their religions, you don't see me at all." So, hey, what a concept. Maybe all the religions should kind of get together after this event, you know? Common ground. So where was I? Oh, yeah, now for the Phoenix symbolism according to the Jews. They had a tradition, or a fable, like I should say, that in the Garden of Eden, after Eve ate the forbidden, Adam and Eve both ate the forbidden fruit, she became jealous of all the animals in the Garden of Eden because they still maintained their immortality. They wouldn't die. So Eve, according to the story, tricked all the animals to eat from the forbidden fruit so that they would die just like she and Adam would. Well, all the animals except one. There was one bird in the Jewish fable that, no, you're not going to trick me. I'm not going to eat that. And God, in order to reward that bird, made sure that he maintained eternal life. It became the Jewish phoenix. And of all places where the Jewish phoenix would come to be reborn, there's two traditions, 500 years or 1,000 years. Anyway, where he would come to reborn, like he goes into an egg formation and he comes up, he doesn't taste death. It's in a city of all places, and on top of everything else, it's a walled city. And Quebec City was a walled city. So it matches the new city, it matches everything that it could be over the skies of Quebec City where this event will take place. All right. Here we go. Now, there's two types of reasoning techniques. One is called deductive reasoning and the other is inductive reasoning. And a good example of that was Colombo, the last one. He would begin what he thought was the answer first. And there's many classic, I can go into it, but I think this guy or this lady or both of them did the murder. Now he has to find clues to go back and prove it. He comes up with a hypothetical answer first. Well, that's what I did with Quebec City. I said if he could predict the future, if it's not a fluke, he should have other references to Quebec City. And here we go. Century 9, Quatrain 97. The forces of the sea divided into three parts. The second one will run out of supplies. In despair, looking for the Elysium fields, the first ones to enter the breach will obtain the victory. Okay, first of all, the forces of the sea divided into three parts. Canada has three oceans on its border, the Pacific, the Arctic, and the Atlantic. So that line could fit for Canada. Now, if he's talking about the French exploration before Champlain established a permanent settlement, then if the second one runs out of supplies, there had to be two. The first one must have failed, and the second one must have failed. Now, that's exactly what happened. There was two official charters given by the nation of France to two noblemen to establish a settlement in France. The first gentleman, and I have to say their $10 names, Jean-François de la Roque Sieur de Roberval. Okay? That took place in the 1530s and extended into the 1540s. I can't remember how far. Jacques Cartier was with him. Roberval had to keep going back to France because there was a war there or something, and he kept coming back. Anyway, whatever happened with that attempt to accomplish a settlement failed. The second one, La Roche de Mezouguet, Trolet, Le Marquis de la Roche. I told you they had $10 names. Anyway, this gentleman was given charter to establish a settlement in Canada. All right? I think it began, he went there in 1598. And there's a story here where he disembarked some of the people with him on Sable Island. All right? And he said, listen, fellas, and they were convicts. 50 of them were convicts. It's like the Dirty Dozen, you know, that whole deal with that. You get convicts to do something, maybe they'll get their freedom by doing this. Anyway, he disembarked 50 convicts and 10 soldiers on Sable Island. He left them with supplies, and then he said, you know what, I'm going to look for a better place to find a landing, and I'll come back and get you guys. Well, according to the story, his story, as he was looking for another place to establish a more suitable settlement, another place better suited to establish a settlement, there was a hurricane and blew his ship halfway back to France. Well, since he was halfway back to France, he said, well, I might as well go back all the way to France. And when he landed in France, he ended up in a civil war, and he got put in jail. I guess he was on the wrong side, whatever happened. But he was in jail for about 5 years. Now, some historians say that during his time in jail, the first few years, he was wealthy enough to keep sending supplies back to Sable Island to the men that he left there. And then he couldn't afford it or something for the last year or the last 2 years. He couldn't afford it. Another version said because he was in jail, he never sent supplies back to him. Anyway, regardless of what that happened, it's either one version or the other one. To quote unquote, the second one will run out of supplies. That's exactly what happened. The reason why it didn't become a permanent settlement is exactly that reason. You can check it up over the internet. They ran out of supplies. By the time they did get back, when he got out of jail, he pleaded with the King of France, I left some guys back there. Do you mind if we find out what happened to him? Out of 60 men, there was 11 or 12 still alive. Barely, but they were still alive. Now notice what he puts afterwards. In despair, looking for the Elysium Fields. All right? So now I mentioned Elysium Fields. Well, I remember taking that in grade 9 mythology. Mr. Farrell was our English teacher. That's when we took Roman and Greek mythology. And I remembered it was somewhere in Hades. So I researched it on the computer, and I found out that the Elysium Fields in Hades was in the western portion of Hades. So if he was referring to France colonizing Canada, they had to go west, and they did. Now, the Elysium Fields, or the Island of the Blessed, located in the western portion of Hades, is not all Hades was a bad place. There was a spot for virtuous people, and that was located, the Elysium Fields, or the Isle of the Blessed, on the western portion of Hades. And just for the heck of it, I decided to see what Elysia means if you translate it from Greek into English. And it means a person or thing struck by lightning. So I'm predicting an event that's going to happen over the skies of Quebec City where Satan will fall like lightning, and Nostradamus just happens to use a word that translates into a person or thing struck by lightning. Last line. The first ones to enter the breach will obtain the victory. That would be Champlain, and as he was sailing up the St. Lawrence River to look for a place to establish a settlement, he came upon this one spot, and he said, holy smoke. And it was like an opening, and he said, this is perfect. We can go up this spot, go all the way up to the top, where there was a cliff, and he founded Quebec City on the, well, it became known as the Heights of Abraham, but on that cliff, that's where it started out as a fort. Quebec City wasn't called Quebec City, but it was a fort, and it became Quebec City later on, and that occurred in 1608 or 1607. 1 year later it was established, whatever. But anyway, all of it fits. And you should also notice something else, right? In despair, looking for the Elysium fields, the first one to enter the breach will obtain the victory. He has a connection with heaven, does he not, with mentioning the Elysium fields? He does have a connection with hell, does he not, because it's located in Hades, and Hades is an underground world, and that's where hell is supposedly located. He has the word victory mentioned, and then he has a person or a thing struck by lightning. So do you think it's possible that Mother Mary from heaven is going to boot Satan's head in from hell, achieve the victory, and he's going to fall like lightning? That matches perfectly with this quatrain if he was talking about opening line Canada, and more specifically Quebec City. Another quatrain. Century 1, quatrain 77. A promontory stands between two seas. A man will die later by the bite of a horse. Neptune unfurls a black sail for his man, the fleet near Gibraltar and Rochefort. All right, let's go from the beginning on this one. A promontory stands between two seas. Yes, Canada does have 3 oceans on its border. But when Canada became a nation, the Arctic to them was like a no man's land. So they thought it was quite an accomplishment if they had a large country like Canada going from the Atlantic to the Pacific. And they chose as their official motto, and it still stands today, they took it from the Bible, a psalm in the Bible, and Canada's official motto is from sea to sea. You can check that out. So the official motto for Canada is stated right here. A promontory stands between two seas. It could fit for Canada. A promontory. Well, Quebec City was founded on the top of a cliff. And the most decisive event that took place in Canadian history took place in 1759. That's when General Wolfe of the British Army, British Navy, whatever, they had a battle with the French and Quebec City fell. That's when Canada became a British possession. So, a promontory stands between two seas could well refer to the Battle of Quebec City, which took place on the Heights of Abraham. Later on, after the event, to give it a more biblical tone, the government or the historians decided to call that, instead of Heights of Abraham, they called it the Plains of Abraham, because it sounds more biblical, and I must admit it does. But technically, a promontory stands between two seas. It fits Quebec City in Canada. A man will die later by the bite of a horse. We're going to ignore that sentence for a second. Neptune unfurls a black sail for his man, the fleet near Gibraltar and Rochefort. Okay, so Brigadier General Wolfe was the commanding officer of the British forces that conquered Quebec City, and therefore the rest of Canada fell under British hands. Anyway, he came over on a fleet, and I researched this, and the HMS Neptune only took place as a flagship 3 times in British history. And one of those times was for that event where General Wolfe came to Canada to fight the French for Dominion of Canada. And his flagship was called the Neptune. And if you're interested even more, Neptune unfurls a black sail for his man. Well, General Wolfe died in the Battle of Quebec City, so that kind of fits that Neptune unfurls a black sail for his man, right? And the black sail was put on the ship. He didn't go back. His body did not go back in the ship, the Neptune. It went back on another ship, but they really did have a black sail for General Wolfe when they brought him back to England. The fleet near Gibraltar and Rochefort. I just told you the names of the 2 noblemen that with their failed attempts to establish a settlement in Quebec City. And if you shorten their names, you get De La Roche and Roberval. And if you combine their names, it would be exactly what this says, Rocheval. I don't know if I mentioned, I forgot, Century 1, Quatrain 77. Rocheval is a combination of both names. The fleet near Gibraltar. Okay, what's Gibraltar got to do with Quebec City? I don't know. I punched in Gibraltar, Quebec City. I didn't expect anything. And what pops out? Quebec City, for the longest time, because of its fortified position, was often called the Gibraltar of the North. So that fits in. Quebec City. Now, one more thing. I'm predicting the age of Aquarius, right, will come with death. There's going to be a mini judgment day, a judgment day to be witnessed by mankind. And if you look at the Neptune not only symbolizing England, but the coming age of Aquarius, it's coming in with a black sail. So if this is the beginning of the age of Aquarius, there will be deaths. Both the innocent and the wicked are going to, in that sizable group, there's going to be two kinds of death, the innocent and the wicked. I don't want to get into that any more than I have to. Neptune unfurls a black sail for his man. It fits both ways for England, and it fits both ways for the coming age of Aquarius. And now we get to the second line. A man will die later by the bite of a horse. And what the heck, does everything fits in with Quebec City, the conquest of Quebec City? And then I get this line. A man will die later by the bite of a horse. So I checked the French translation, and it does say mort de cheval. And the only connection I could get was mord does mean bite, but it also could mean to overlap. So Nostradamus might be presenting one event in his future and then overlapping it with another event that's going to take place in the same city. That's possible, but it was kind of stretching it. Then just the other day, this line kept bothering me and bothering me. So I said, a man will die later by the bite of a horse. So there's this website that has, if you want to go to it, it's punch in Nostradamus Quatrain and Sixtus, S-I-X-T-U-S, because that website has the only quatrain where he translates a word for Stod as Sixtus. He was a Roman pope at one time. There they have a French dictionary. Okay, so I decided to check mort out in that French dictionary. And it has 3 different translations. One is bite. So Nostradamus could very well have meant a man will die later by the bite of a horse. That could be legitimate. Mort in the 16th century could also mean fall. A man will die later from a fall off a horse. All right. Then the third possibility to translate mort in the 16th century dictionary was deadly injury. So if you read it from that point of view, a man will die later from a deadly injury while on horseback, if you want to put it in a more grammatically correct way. A man will die later from a deadly injury suffered when he was on horseback. And I just said that General Wolfe, for the British side of things, died during the Battle of the Quebec City. Well, there was another general who died that day, General Montcalm, and he represented the French forces. And he was on a horse when he died. He went there to rally his troops, get the movements going, and according, I just checked this out a couple days ago. And he was trying to, and then one version is he got stuck in the mud or the blood or whatever, and he couldn't turn. And while he was in a stationary position, he took 2 shots. 2 shots went through his body, and he slumped on the horse. So 2 soldiers saw this, and as he was slumped on the horse, they brought him back to the gates of Quebec City. They opened the gates, and he went in there. Now the clue here is a man will die later by that serious injury when he was upon a horse. General Wolfe died on the battlefield. He only lived a few minutes after he got shot. It was a mortal wound. General Montcalm, however, died later. He died the following day around 5 a.m. in the morning. So this fits in perfectly, describing both generals and how they died for the conquest. The British General Wolfe, who died in the Battle of Quebec City, and it also describes perfectly how General Montcalm representing the French forces, or the leader of the French forces, died. He did die later, just like he said, from a deadly injury from when he was on horseback. Now, one more thing to tell you. The Battle of Quebec City was fought in 1759. All right? But the date of that event was September 13th. My birthday, if anybody cares, I'm not kidding. But anyway, September 13th is, or was, a Fatima Day, because the events of Fatima stretch from May 13th to October 13th. So there is a connection with Fatima. And oh, by the way, if you're not doing anything after watching this video, you're on YouTube now, why don't you go to a website, just punch in Mother Mary, province of Quebec. And somebody noticed on Google Earth that if you look at it and just turn it to the side, it does look like Mother Mary praying in the outline of Quebec. Maybe that's more support. I could be right. Who knows? Quatrain, or Century 4, Quatrain 96. The elder sister of the British Isles will be born 15 years before her brother. Because of her promise procuring verification, she will succeed to the kingdom of the balance. All right. I just got done mentioning the British end of things for the Battle of Quebec City. Well, here he goes mentioning the British Isles and their input into the colonization of Canada. The elder sister of the British Isles will be born 15 years before her brother. First of all, I forgot to mention this. When Quebec City was deemed as the oldest city in Canada by the Minister of Culture, there was a protest or a challenge to it, because the people of St. John's, Newfoundland said, no, we were more established than Quebec City, so therefore we deserve the title of being the oldest city in Canada. And they could be right in one sense, but they're wrong in another sense. A charter was given to Sir Humphrey Gilbert as early as 1583 from Queen Elizabeth I to settle wherever they wanted in North America, to establish a colony or a settlement. And in 1583, Sir Humphrey Gilbert died. And there's a story about a sea monster there. If you want to investigate that, go ahead. Anyway, he died, and the charter went over to a relative of his, who was Sir Walter Raleigh, and Sir Walter Raleigh decided to establish that settlement lower down, more south, in the state of what is now known as Virginia, and that turned out to be Roanoke Island, the colony there. Well, that failed too. There's a great mystery about how those people disappeared. Anyway, the first established British settlement that took place in the United States was 1607. Now, Nostradamus wrote, the elder sister of the British Isle will be born 15 years before her brother. Well, if he's putting Canada in the feminine this way, is it possible that the people of England had a settlement in St. John's as early as 1592? Yes, it is extremely possible. They had fish processing plants that they would build, but they there, and they would use them on a seasonal basis. That's why when they went over to fish, they would go on the settlement that they had there, fill up their ships as much they could with fish, and then bring them back. So the argument as far as the oldest city in Canada was concerned, which Quebec City was founded in 1608, the people of St. John said, well, we were there a lot earlier than Canada. And the Minister of Culture said, yeah, but you were only there on a seasonal basis. People went back. Quebec City was there on a yearly basis, so therefore the distinction has to go to Quebec City. And I think they made the right choice there. You're there for the entire year, but there was a case submitted by the people of St. John's, and if nothing else, at least you're mentioned in the Quatrains of Nostradamus. Maybe if I go there, you'll buy me a beer. Okay, the elder sister of the British Isles will be born 15 years before her brother. Now notice what Nazi Baby did. That's what I called him in my book. Because of her promise procuring verification. There's that word again, verification. So, he puts Canada in the feminine, right? Because of her promise procuring verification. And it was a lady, if I'm right, that will cause an event that would warrant a verification. So now there's a double play on the female image. Mother Mary will do this event over the skies of Quebec City, which would warrant verification before the world. Did this really happen? Did this come from God? And he uses Canada in the female because of her promise procuring, bringing about the verification. And she will succeed to the kingdom of the balance. Well, there's going to be a judgment day, if I'm correct, as a result of this event that will be witnessed by all of mankind. So that kind of fits the kingdom of the balance, you know, the scales. And it also fits with Virgo holding the scales. An event will come from a virgin mother. Remember when I said about Quebec City, it's at 46 degrees latitude, just missed the mark. Well, maybe he didn't. Maybe Nostradamus didn't miss the mark. One of the things I noticed about Nostradamus is he would use past historical events, past to him, to predict future ones, and he would use stand-ins to represent either Mother Mary or whatever. Well, he may have used a stand-in for Quebec City. And this is the quatrain that made me realize that. The sky of Plancus City forebodes to us, through clear signs and fixed stars, that the time of sudden change is approaching, neither for its good nor for its evil. I don't know if I just said this, but quatrain, century 3, quatrain 46. Anyway, first of all, with anything to do with sky, I went through all the quatrains, sky, lightning. There was a Native American prophecy that said the next age will begin with a worldwide sound. Well, Satan gets booted in the head. That should cause a worldwide sound. But anyway, anything to do with that type of thing, the skies over a city, I researched. I came to this quatrain. The sky of Plancus City forebodes to us. Okay, what the heck's a Plancus? I researched that, and it is a bird in South America. And I don't think it's a phoenix. But. Okay, second definition for Plancus was there was this ancient Roman called Munatius Plancus, and he was either a lieutenant or a general under Julius Caesar when they conquered France. All right. Now there's a story there. We had a shipment of gold, had to go back to Rome, and suddenly thieves came upon that shipment and they stole all the money. And people think, historians think, yeah, he probably took it himself, staged the whole thing. Anyway, he was involved in the conquest of Gaul. That's what it was called back then. And then he went back to Rome and then became a nation, whatever. Anyway, over the years, the Romans kind of realized, you know, you gained a lot of money from your excursions in Gaul there. I think you should use some of that money to find a new city in Gaul. What do you think? Oh, yeah, okay. So Plancus founded a city in France, and the city was called Lyon. And Lyon was the new city to the Roman Empire. And Lyon is at 45 degrees latitude. And Lyon, like Quebec City, started out as a fort. And Lyon, the translation of the Latin word for Lyon at the beginning was fort on a hill, and Quebec City was fort on a cliff. And so where do the walls come in? Well, Quebec City was a walled city. So you know how certain cities have nicknames or descriptive terms to describe them? New York is the Big Apple, right? The city of Windsor is called the City of Roses. Las Vegas is called the PG capital of the world. Yeah, okay. Anyway, the nickname or the descriptive term to define Lyon is the City of Walls. So you got kind of a perfect match there, except for the 45 to the 46 degrees latitude discrepancy. But Lyon has a special connection to a certain lady, Mother Mary, because during the second wave of the bubonic plague, I think it was in the 1600s, the people of Lyon collectively got together and they prayed to Mother Mary to spare them from the plague. And they were spared. Years later, they decided to honor Mother Mary, and they have a festival. I think it began late 1800s, and it's still been maintained, the Festival of Lights. And it's to honor Mother Mary for things. So there's a connection with Mother Mary at 45 degrees latitude in a new city, in the City of Walls. You know, it fits. Now notice what he wrote. The sky of Plancus City forebodes to us. So the sky of Quebec City, Lyon, meaning Quebec City, forebodes to us through clear signs and fixed stars that a sudden change is approaching, neither for its good or for its evil, nor for its evil. Well, Quebec City, this event is not going to be for its good or for its evil. It's going to be the ground zero of the new age. And it's nice to have a nice ground zero instead of a bad one. Right? So it's neither for its good nor for its evil. You're only the location where the spot where the new age will begin. And then look what he wrote. The sky of, if you will, Quebec City through clear signs and fixed stars, that a sudden change, that the time of a sudden change is approaching. Well, I think it's the beginning of a new age, that's going to take place after this event over the skies of Quebec City. And here, notice what he wrote. If Quebec City, if it isn't for its good or for its evil, then why would Nostradamus write, the sky over this Quebec City forebodes to us? First of all, who did he mean by us? That would be mankind. And something negative could come out of this event if mankind doesn't get all together on the same page. And I agree with the scientists, this is the most critical time for mankind's history. We have to all get together on the same page, and that includes all the major religions. Okay, quatrain, century 6, quatrain 32. When all is good, well abundant, in sun and moon your ruin approaches. It comes from the sky as you rift through your exhausted fortune in the same state as the seventh rock. Okay, something from the sky is going to affect a sizable number of people, but in the same state of the seventh rock. Well, do you remember both noblemen again? One had De La Roche in his name, which means rock, and the other one had De La Rock in his name, which means rock or bigger rock. So I could never find out through the computer, but I'm willing to bet one of these gentlemen, noblemen, was either the seventh generation to hold the title, whatever earl or whatever he was, or he was the seventh child. So this event could fit in Canada. Okay, another one. Earth-shaking fire from the century 1, quatrain 87. Earth-shaking fire from the center of the earth will cause the towers of the new city to shake. Two great rocks for a long time will make war, and then Arethusa will color a new river red. All right, two great rocks at war for a long time. France and England, they were kind of at war for a long time. Earth-shaking fire from the center of the earth. Can you think of an entity that comes from the center of the earth? Something that when he rises will shake the earth, and especially will cause the towers of the new city to shake. And last but not least, and then Arethusa will color a new river red. So if I am right about the age of Aquarius coming in, it will be with blood. Arethusa, by the way, I forgot to mention, this was a water nymph. Okay, so color a new river red in Canada means, like I said, the age of Aquarius will come with blood, both of the innocent and the wicked. This is the last quatrain I'm going to read. I got dozens more, believe me. But I want to get to the third secret of Fatima. Century 3, quatrain 96. The chief of Fasano will have his throat cut by the leader of the bloodhound and greyhound. The deed executed by those of the Tarpeian Rock, Saturn in Leo, February 13th. All right? So, the event that I'm predicting when Satan falls is going to be a group of people that he's going to claim with him right away when he has his downfall. And they're the most evil of that group, that sizable number. Anyway, Nostradamus used different terms to describe some of the individuals. And one of them was, in this instance, the chief of Fasano will have his throat cut by the leader of the bloodhound and greyhound. He's going to suffer a violent death, and if the other people are commissioned to speak, like, I don't know if I mentioned this, Nostradamus even has a word for where that group of people will be commissioned to speak, and he used the word formand. And for in Latin means to speak, and mond means sent to or commissioned. So that group that suffered a loss, whatever, and they are marked out, they were going to be called to testify, commissioned to speak. Well, this gentleman won't be called to testify because he has his throat cut. He will suffer a violent death right at the beginning by the leader of the bloodhound and greyhound. Now, you don't know how much I wanted to make this Artemis, the virgin hunter goddess, right, who the sister of Apollo, because it would fit in with the feminine figure who one way or another brought about this person's death. Mother Mary's not going to kill anybody, but when Satan falls, it's going to claim his own, the main principles of the affair right at the beginning. 5 to 9 of them, if I'm right. Anyway, what does he write after? The deed executed by those of the Tarpeian Rock. I didn't know what this meant, so I went to the computer, and it turns out that during the Roman Republic period, they would execute criminals by throwing them over the Tarpeian Rock. And Tarpeia was a Vestal Virgin. And the Temple of the Vestal Virgins was located near the Tarpeian Rock. So the deed executed by those of the Tarpeian Rock, any way you look at it, there's a virgin, right, who is one way or another connected to the execution of criminals, or if you look at it in a bigger viewpoint, the death of sinners. And it matches what I've been saying. The deed executed by those of the Tarpeian. There's a virgin involved. Now for the last line. Saturn in Leo, February 13th. All right. Saturn, I came to discover, was quote-unquote the planet of karma. You know, that's another description to describe, astrologically speaking, I guess. It's called the planet of karma. All right. And he says in Leo. Well, Leo could be the constellation Leo. But one of the things I found out that is if you translate Leo into the French way now, it's the same way we spell it, lion, right? But in the 16th century, Leo was spelled the same way we spell Lyon today, Lyon. So the planet of karma in Lyon could be an event from Lyon/Quebec City. And then notice what he wrote here. February 13th. All right, what does February 13th have to do with anything? The events from Fatima took place from May 13th to October 13th. Yes, that's correct. But just for the heck of it, I decided to research when Lucy of Fatima died. I knew she died very elderly. She was an elderly person when she died. So I punched in February 13th, Lucy of Fatima's death, and she died on February 13th. So there is a direct connection with Fatima in this quatrain right here. She died in 2005, if anybody's interested. Anyway, so if you now work backwards, the connection with Fatima, with Lyon, virgin's going to be responsible or have some part in the death of criminals, i.e. quote-unquote sinners, then the leader of the greyhound, or the bloodhound and greyhound, could very well have been referring to Artemis, the moon goddess, the sister of Apollo. It could all fit in with the feminine figure here. Now I'm going to stop and go to the third secret of Fatima. There's more quatrains, believe me, but here we go. I'm going to go into a little bit of the events, from Fatima. Mother Mary appeared to 3 children in Fatima in 1917. There are Lucy, Jacinta, and Francesca. Anyway, like I said, she was there May 13th, June 13th, July 13th. That's when she imparted 3 secrets or visions, primarily to Lucy, the oldest one of the 3, at Fatima. On August 13th, the children were not there because they got hauled to the police station, and Portugal at the time was either a very socialist country or out-and-out communist country, and they didn't want this proclamation of God taking place right in their country because people were coming in. And anyway, she did appear to the children at the police station on August 19th. But the people who were at Fatima, expecting Mother Mary, the children weren't there, but they detected a smell of roses. So it's determined that Mother Mary was there on August 13th, but the children were not. She then appeared On September, the police said, well, what are we going to do with these three crazy kids? We're being looked at. The whole world is looking at us. Well, let them go. If they're crazy, they're crazy. Whatever they got to see how this thing ends. So they were released. They were never bothered by the police again. And September 13th, she appeared to the children again. And October 13th, that was the culmination of the 6 visits of Fatima, and that's the event where the dance of the sun took place. Okay, I'm not going to get into that, but you can research it. People saw 3 different visions, if you will. Some people didn't see anything. There was another group and another group and another. Anyway, the events of Fatima kind of just faded away after that. The 2 youngest children ended up dying early, Jacinta and Francesco. When I was a kid, when I went to Catholic school, we took something about they died in a fire, but that wasn't true at all. They died of an illness. So that left Lucy. She became a nun, and she entered a convent in Portugal. So anyway, during the 1940s, she became extremely ill. And the priest who was overseeing that convent said, well, you got to tell us what the secrets were. So whether the 2 first secrets were divulged in 1917 is a moot point to me. She quickly divulged the first 2 secrets of Fatima. One was a vision of hell. The other one was a hope that from Mother Mary that Russia consecrates herself to her. And then the 3rd secret, Lucy would not tell anybody. She didn't want to tell anybody. And he said, you have to say it. It's from God. We have to know what it is. And she refused. So then he went back to his boss, the bishop, and the bishop ordered her, through the priest, you got to divulge what the 3rd secret of Fatima is. So she did. She wrote it. Now there's a discrepancy whether he wrote it or she did. But whatever, it ended up in a letter, and Lucy said, bring this to the Vatican and tell the Vatican not to open it, not for the Pope not to open it until 1960. And the priest said, well, why 1960? And then she answered back, that's when things will become more clear. And the joke at the time was, in 1960, when Pope John the 23rd did open up the letter, because there was a presidential campaign in the United States between Richard Nixon and John F. Kennedy, when he opened up the letter and he read it, this message of God would say, don't vote for Nixon, which I can see God saying that. Anyway, after John the 23rd read it, it was sealed, and every successive pope after that kept it under lock and key until the year 2000, when John Paul II decided to release this 3rd secret to the world. And for all intents and purposes, it was a letdown, because nobody could interpret the 3rd secret of Fatima. In fact, they tried to decipher it, and whatever, no meaning came out of it. They couldn't figure it out. So I agree with that website where they said the church doesn't know what to do with the events of Fatima. You have this event building and building and building, and then nobody can interpret the 3rd secret of Fatima. It was almost gibberish. Anyway, he released it to the public, and I'm going to read it now. The 3rd part of the secret revealed at Cova di Ira Fatima on July 13th, 1917. I write in obedience to you, my God, who command me to do through His Excellency the Bishop of Leiria, and through your most holy mother and mine. After the 2 parts, those are the 2 first visions that she just gave up easily. There was no problem with that. After the first 2 parts, which I have already explained, at the left of Our Lady and a little above, we saw an angel with a flaming sword in his left hand, flashing. It gave out flames that looked as though they would set the world on fire, but they died out in contact with the splendor of Our Lady, with the splendor that Our Lady radiated towards her from her right hand. Pointing to the earth with his right hand, the angel cried out in a loud voice, penance, penance, penance. And we saw an immense light that is God, something similar to how people appear in a mirror when they pass in front of a mountain, in front of a bishop dressed in white. We had the impression that it was the Holy Father, other bishops, priests, men, women, religious, going up a steep mountain. At the top of the mountain there was a big cross of rough-hewn trunks as of a cork tree with the bark. Before reaching there, the Holy Father passed through a big city, half in ruins, half trembling and halting step. Afflicted with pain and sorrow, he prayed for the souls of the corpses he met on the way. Having reached the top of the mountain, on his knees at the floor of the big cross, he was killed by a group of soldiers who fired bullets and arrows at him, and at the same time there died, one after another, the other bishops, priests, men and women religious, and the various lay people of different ranks and positions. Beneath the two arms of the cross there was two angels, each with a crystal aspersum in his hand, in which they gathered up the blood of the martyrs, and it was sprinkled, and with it sprinkled the souls that were making their way up to God, or making their way to God. Okay, so that's the third secret of Fatima, as released by the Vatican. And again, nobody could come up with an interpretation for it. They kept reading it and reading it, whatever. Anyway, this was the official version from the Vatican concerning the third secret of Fatima. It was written by Joseph Ratzenberger, who became Pope Benedict. A careful reading of the text of the so-called third secret of Fatima will probably prove disappointing or surprising after all the speculation it has stirred. No great mystery is revealed, nor the future unveiled. Okay, and I read it, and I got like Nostradamus supporting me to the hilt over here. You know, if I can get the third secret of Fatima, interpret it, that would certainly help. Might not prove I'm right about anything. This could all be a knot tied in the air. Nothing may come of it. But anyway, it would be more support if I could interpret the third secret of Fatima. And I read it, and I read it, and I read it. And then after, God knows how many times, I said, well, maybe I should look at it in sections. Maybe I'll get a meaning from that. And as soon as I said that, I realized it was in sections. If you take the first section, Mother Mary is not on the planet Earth. She is looking down upon the earth. And the angel of the Lord next to her had a flaming sword that could engulf the earth. And Mother Mary stayed his hand. By her radiance, she stopped him from this great chastisement that was aimed towards the earth. All right? So, Mother Mary prevented a great chastisement towards the planet Earth, and the angel then said to the earth, penance, 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 or change. You know, if you want the age of Aquarius, why don't you start treating everybody like, you know, you would each other, or you would yourself, I mean. So, can I ask you something? If Mother Mary prevented a great chastisement towards the earth, why does it look like one took place? I just read the second section to you. Lucy said she had the impression that the person there, the bishop, was the Pope. Does this sound like a viable Catholic Church to you? Since when does a Pope not stand out amidst cardinals? You can tell who the Pope is and who the cardinals are. You can tell a Pope standing in the midst of bishops, but this time you can't. She had the impression that it was the Holy Father. This is a Pope in hiding. This is not a viable Catholic Church. They are being hunted down and killed. And they know they're being hunted down and killed. And they want their last statement on this planet is with their deaths to go up that mountain and die. But they want to hold true to God by their deaths. They're going to say, God, even to the bitter end of the third secret of Fatima, we fulfilled it. So they're going up that mountain to die, nothing else. And if you read it, city in half ruins, corpses everywhere. All right? And one more thing about what Lucy said. And they were shot by soldiers with bullets and arrows. Since when, even by 1917 standards, as a sophisticated army bring bows and arrows? Does this sound like an army, sophisticated army to you? This sounds like a seed from road warriors. All right? So again, if Mother Mary prevented a great chastisement towards the earth, why does it look like one took place? Because to me, the whole key of the third secret of Fatima is not what was written, it's what took place in the gap between the time Mother Mary stayed the angel's hand and this terrible end that befell the earth. And what took place in the gap was the lady clothed with the sun, and she booted Satan's head in, and mankind was given a warning. Penance, penance, penance. Get your, well, I'll say but, back to God. Start treating everybody on this planet the way you yourself want to be treated. It could be the beginning of a glorious age for mankind. And if that happens, it has to be sustained. Because if it fades back, if the age of Aquarius reverses itself through mankind, then God will unleash his hand. And that's when all the negative things in Revelation will kick in. If you took the events of the third secret of Fatima and put it over top of that event in Revelation, it's the same thing. The lady clothed with the sun will boot Satan's head in. But there's a difference. It came with a warning to mankind. Anyway, I'm going to stop right here. Hopefully that's, if nothing else, I convinced you of the possibility that what I am predicting could take place. By the way, one of the things I want to mention is the best description I ever heard for being wrong came from a movie called The Boston Strangler. And Henry Fonda was in it, Tony Curtis. And if Tony Curtis didn't receive a Lifetime Achievement Award, I think he should have, but hopefully he did. But anyway, in that film, the police were almost confident they found the Boston Strangler. They brought, Henry Fonda was the lead district attorney for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts at the time, and they went to visit this guy in an insane asylum. And the cops said, he's in and out of the insane asylum. He could have been out to commit the murders and then hid back here. And then they pointed out, look, the numbers of X's that he has on these women match the number of victims. So what happened? Henry Fonda talked to the guy for 5 minutes, and then he said those lines, I'll never forget them as long as I live. Henry Fonda said, gentlemen, I think we just made a terrific landing in the wrong airport. This is not the Strangler. So that could be me. This could be this with what I just presented before you. Am I right? I don't know. I can't bring this event about. This event is like going to the racetrack, if any of you ever went there. You get a program and you handicap a horse, right? You say, I think, you look through the program, the history of all the horses, and you try to pick which horse you think is going to win. Well, one thing I found out about going to the racetrack is you can have one good reason why a horse should win, 5, even 100, but you're not going to know if you're right until the race is over. That's the same thing here with me. I don't know if I'm right. I'm just making my educated guess on what I believe is going to happen, and I believe it's going to happen very soon. Put it this way, if I'm correct, it has to happen anytime between now and March, late March 2017, and it will circle around a Fatima Day. And if I'm wrong, I hope I entertain you with the possibilities. Thank you very much. Oh, tell your friends, once you email this to the Vatican, and say, this is a supply teacher's version of Third Secret of Fatima. Do you think he has a leg to stand on here? Do you think this makes sense, that the lady clothed with the sun took place in between the gap there? Anyway, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this video, and maybe were entertained by it too.